And starting, I guess, about 10 years ago, I've been playing around with how to install functional pots in a gallery setting, because otherwise they'd have to be on 100 different pedestals walking around the gallery. So I wanted to create a visual painting that would sort of encapsulate all of the pots that I made. In terms of subject matter, they're all around the theme of animal nature. So there's a nice thread of predator-prey running through many of them. You'll see that they have little dead animals in their mouth as they're eating their prey. And then the large image down at the bottom, the lion has a tree growing out of his mouth, but it's also an illusion of language. So he's the storyteller, and he's telling the story of the fable that is the animal's animal nature about survival. The issues around survival and instinct have been running through my work for about 5 years, and have sort of ebbed and flowed. As my life changes, then my sort of perspective on how to talk about that conversation changes as well. Okay, questions? All right, great, bye. Scott, you're next. They're all porcelain, they're all hand-built, so I don't use a potter's wheel. I'm pinching, and I'm using a lot of evidence of my hand as maker in the work as a record of my own experience as a being. So I actually am leaving fingerprints in the mark of the work so that you can see my actual self in the work as well.
Those pieces are your prey.
Yeah, they are in some sense. A delicate balance. I don't have to sign them. I guess you could do like a DNA fingerprints on there. I do sign them.
This is just a comment. You don't see those pots immediately. You have to work a little bit to find them in the they're camouflaged a little. That was your intent? You have to work a little to see what's going. It's a wonderful overall effect. I love it. But if you want somebody to just focus on the pot, that doesn't happen right away.
Right, and that's the part of sort of dealing with the installation aspect of them, and how I treated the glazes themselves as supposed to sort of blend in with the background
So
a little bit.
that's.
So the installations I've been working on over the last few years have really kind of swung a little bit in terms of how graphic they've been, or in this case, it's probably the most painterly of all of the.
So the concept is it's concept.
Even added a little Spanish moss on there.
I know, it's long, but it's everything.
Crocheted my little heart out.
So that's it is.
They seem to have like a little oriental kind of flavor to them.
It's possible. I mean, ceramics in general has a huge foot of history that is coming from Asia. And as one of my many day jobs, I teach Asian art history. So my other day job is to run a ceramic studio. I teach classes to the general public called Red Hot Center for Play. Get my nice little plug on there. I guess I should have been wearing my t-shirt. We've been open a year. Come visit.
Can you talk about the focus on the birds? Because typically your work doesn't, or at least the work I've seen, doesn't typically only focus on birds. There's lots of different animals in there.
That really started about 2.5 years ago. That was kind of a series of death and tragedy, and I just really kind of clung on to the bird as a metaphor of dealing with a good deal of grief all at once. Maybe it was escapist, where I was like, fly away, fly away. But it didn't show up until then, and maybe when I'm 75 I'll figure out a little bit more as to what really it was about, but I can't get rid of it. So.
Any other questions for Leanne?
What are some of the animals in there?
What are some of the animals? Well, some are pretty clear, right? There's a owl, a hawk. The owl has a frog in his mouth. This is supposed to be a roadrunner. He's got a little gecko in his mouth. The hawk, obviously. These are just songbirds. They kind of look like pigs, but they're, why did I just forget the name? It starts with a J, right? They're like from the Southwest, they look like little. Javelinas, thank you. Javelina, puffin, cardinal, some are not necessarily like supposed to be a specific real animal. Like that deer up the top is more like a medieval deer. And the image in the background, the tree, is more of a medieval tree. And it's embedded on top of a bunch of maps that I taped together. But the maps are all the history of Europe and the Middle East. So it's the rise of the Roman Empire, Charlemagne. So there's a whole predator-prey thing that is the subcontext of the work, but that's a thin layer. And then, I didn't put the flowers in there until the reception, but very often as a theme throughout showing my work over the years, I've tried to have some aspect of use so that they don't just look like they're a product, but actually shown in the context of how you would use them. So my thesis show from my MFA, which was 10 years ago, 2001, I showed the actual pots in the gallery with decomposed food in them, having been eaten the night before. So that's also a constant theme within how I would want to show the work so that it doesn't look sort of unloved. I want to see it sort of how it might be used. And it's okay for me to leave those dead flowers in there. It might bug somebody else. I like it. That kind of aspect of decay shown with the pristine.
What made you want to do the
Predator-prey thing?
Yeah.
Again, that's probably been about 5 years with this conversation about instinct, survival instinct. Like how do you sort of make the decisions that you make, and what involved in that is self-preservation. And that's why I use animals as kind of that metaphor. It's easier to kind of talk about those issues rather than showing actual portraits of people, which can get really loaded. And it also ties into the aspect of Fable. Y'all saw my 2-year-old running around here. I read a lot of kids' books right now. And a lot of the stories of animals are loaded with these metaphors of character and how you're supposed to like learn life lessons by looking at the metaphor of the animal. Like a lion means something different than a puppet.
Does your 2-year-old enjoy this?
I don't think that it actually exists on the radar yet. It's pretty, he likes cars. A lot. And horses. So, maybe someday he'll figure the rest of it out.
What does he think of your birds?
What is he? Again, cars and horses. Those are the only 2 things that sort of pop up on the radar.